professor and assistant chair of the Textile Development and Marketing Department at FIT. We are pleased to be partners with the Robin Report to present this thought leadership forum on a critical issue, microplastic pollution and its effect on the environment. We'll take a broader look at the intersection of microplastics and biodegradation research, as well as how consumer demand is impacting how science and sourcing play roles in the future of sustainability. These questions are top of mind with our students, so this is important to us as educators, as well as the retail industry. We are in good hands for this conversation with a panel of experts. Let me introduce you to Kim Kitchings, Senior Vice President, Consumer Marketing, Cotton Incorporated, who will lead the discussion. Kim.
Right. Thank you, Ajoy. So what I'd like to do is start the scene today for us. There are many issues that impact our environment today. And when we talk with consumers specifically about apparel and sustainability, their top three issues are water pollution, air quality, and climate change. The dangers of microplastics are difficult to underestimate. Synthetic textiles now represent 35% of the microplastics found in our oceans. And if plastic pollution continues unchecked, there could be more plastic in our oceans than fish by 2050. In the study this year, microplastics were found in human blood, and the impacts of microplastics in the human body is a growing area of research in the scientific community. Meanwhile, in our most recent Lifestyle Monitor research, and we've been conducting this research for over 25 years on different subjects, the majority of consumers who were aware of microplastics, or specifically microfiber pollution, know that much of the microplastic pollution is caused by washing clothes that are made from synthetic fibers. So today, microplastic pollution from synthetic textiles can be found all over our world, from Mount Everest, the highest point on our planet, all the way to the Mariana Trench, the deepest oceanic trench on Earth. These are real issues that we're facing today. Our panelists are a panel of experts in sustainability research, product development, retail brands, and sourcing. We gathered them to bring you insights and expertise and solutions. And I'm personally delighted to say that three of these panelists I work very closely with at Cotton Incorporated, and I am grateful for the work they're doing on behalf of our company and our industry at large. So let's get into our topic and let's get started. I'd like each of you today to briefly tell us about your role in sustainability and then your perspective on the issue of microplastic pollution. I'm going to start with Mary. After you tell us about your role, Mary, can you also please explain the difference between microplastics and microfibers? It can be very confusing to consumers.
Hi, Kim. Yes, thank you very much. My name is Mary Ankeny. I am Vice President, Product Development and Implementation here at Cotton Incorporated. I also head up the Textile Chemistry Research Department here at Cotton Incorporated. So my role in sustainability is to help reduce chemical inputs, water inputs, energy inputs into the textile wet processing area. And so in these cases, we are looking to source more sustainable products so that we can reduce the overall impact on the environment. For example, if we utilize dye stuff that has a higher exhaustion rate, that means we're putting less unreacted dye down the drain. When we are sourcing chemistry, we want to make sure that the chemicals that we choose for finishing aspects have a small impact on the environment, such as replacing water repellents based on fluorochemicals with wax and silicone-based materials. So we're continuously looking for ways that we can help improve the cotton wet processing industry. And part of that kind of evolved into making sure that we understood how cotton behaved at its, end of life, if it was to be shed from garments in the washing machine or shed from garments in the dryer and made its way out into the environment, would cotton decompose? And previous research has informed us that cotton in a composting environment did break down. And so we were very interested in learning, how did cotton that may not be buried in the soil, how would that decompose? And, building on Kim's question about the difference between microplastics and microfibers, microplastics, the actual definition of microplastics is they're any synthetic solid particle or polymeric matrix with a regular or irregular shape with a size ranging from 1 micron to 5 millimeters. I mean, this is very, very small, and they are very difficult to see with the naked eye. They can either be of primary or secondary manufacturing origin, which means that they were either specifically made to be that small, say an abrasive that might be found in a face wash or in a cosmetic, or they have broken off from a larger piece of plastic. And, say there was a bottle that made its way into the environment, and, through exposure to the weather, to UV, it broke down into smaller fragments. So these are considered microplastics. And microplastics, by definition, are insoluble in water. Now, microfibers are, very similar to microplastics in that they are also size range between 1 micron and 5 millimeters. Again, very difficult to see. And these shed from textile garments. They can, as Kim mentioned, they can shed in the wash, or they can shed by abrasion just through wearing. So they find their way into our oceans, into our waterways, and they also find their way into the air. And so they are, they find their way everywhere across the globe, even in places where, there's very little human interaction.
Great. Thanks, Mary, for that. I think you did a wonderful job explaining the real concern that we all have in the industry and the things we're doing. Let's jump to Marissa Barlin now. We work very closely together, and she does a lot of exciting work for us on the promotional side. So Marissa, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here today. As Kim mentioned, my name is Marissa Barlin. I work within the Consumer Marketing Division in the Brand Partnerships Department specifically. So as a marketer for cotton, it's my job to help educate retailers and brands on the many benefits of cotton, and specifically how these benefits can be promoted to the consumer at point of sale. Of course, with cotton being a natural fiber, this is where the most interest lies with our retail partners. It's a significant and really easy to digest notion for retailers and their customers. My perspective on the issue of microplastic pollution is that when we help to educate the industry, it is most impactful when we help them to understand the issue in a relatable way, such as, Kim, how you started the conversation and talked to how if plastic pollution remains unchecked, this could lead to there being more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050. This is a really powerful thing to think about. We've also learned and talked through, about how humans are eating about a credit card worth of plastic per week. This is astounding information, and our customers, our partners, and our brands, they really take heart when they're hearing this information, and they want to try and do better and do something to help their processes and all the way through their brand marketing.
Great. Good insight, Marissa. Thank you. Stephen.
All right. Thanks so much, Kim. And I really appreciate you all having me on this very important discussion. I think it's both one of my favorite and most alarming sort of topics in our industry. But I'm Stephen Piers. I'm the sustainability manager at Cotton Incorporated. My role is to manage a portfolio of projects that really help drive the industry forward on their sustainability journey and really promote continuous improvement. So this really goes across the supply chain, from growing the cotton all the way to manufacturing, use, and disposal. So in terms of the production and growth side of the supply chain, we have a major emphasis on our 10-year sustainability goals. Pretty much everything we do project research wise is focused on driving towards achieving those. Those goals are to be met by 2025, and that's really, really important. So we focus on soil health, nutrient management, adopting of conservation practices that really limit the emissions of that are out there, and just doing our part to driving continuous improvement yet again. On the downstream end of the supply chain, we're focused on empowering brands to feel confident about using cotton in their sustainability strategies. So this, we do this in a number of different ways, from filling key data gaps that are out there. We also have decades worth of research that are really focused on all levels of sustainability, and making sure the best data is out there for the industry to use when they're incorporating those in their sustainable evaluation tools that exist. The issue of microplastics is super critical, and back to the tools that are out there that brands and retailers are using. Unfortunately, in life cycle assessment, which is a common methodology used for brands, retailers, actually the whole industry, to kind of evaluate their hotspot, we've done an LCA as well to kind of see what our hotspots are. And a lot of our efforts are focused on using that data. So the nutrient management side I talked about for ag, that's one of our focuses. It's a hotspot in our LCA. So, a hotspot of the industry that we're talking about here is microplastic emissions. Currently, the LCA methodologies do not actually incorporate this impact. So that's a big problem. So we're working with researchers to try to fill that gap and make sure that these emissions and impacts are actually adequately quantified for the industry. Because like I said, right now, this isn't part of the impact category as a part of LCA. We've been mentioning the amount of plastics that are out there. Synthetic textiles are responsible for about 35% of the microplastics that are found in our oceans. Like Kim said, they're found all over the place. I'm happy to be on this team at Cotton Incorporated working on solutions. Synthetic fibers are, again, major part of this issue, and we have a pretty simple solution with research to back up that cotton is a viable solution for this problem.
Great, thanks, Stephen. I did not realize that it wasn't part of the impact measurement when you look at that microplastics. That's really something to keep in mind, and also to remind everyone listening or viewing is that it's an evolution. This changes. We're learning as we go, and everyone in the industry is, and we're making these improvements together. Next, we have Preeti. Preeti, if you can tell us about how do you teach on this subject at FIT with your students, and how do they feel about the issue?
Thanks, Kim. Thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to talk on this platform. My name is Preeti Arya, and I'm an assistant professor at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. And I teach textile science, fabric development, textile finishing, and performance textiles. So as a professor of textiles, it is my duty to educate and inform our students regarding different types of polymers that are used in the textile industry, both natural and man-made. I also inform them regarding the properties of how the natural and man-made polymers behave and impact the environment, and not just the environment, to us also as a species. The data regarding the consumption of individual fiber type within the industry is discussed, and since FIT is a huge promoter and supporter of sustainability, we encourage our students to think critically regarding corporate social responsibility, regarding the choices the several brands are making to generate revenue, profit, and possibly indulging in sustainability, because they will be joining the workforce once they graduate. It could be in a year, 2 or 3 years. I let my students discuss and debate what is ethical and sustainable. Mostly the discussions end up with a unanimous vote for the use of natural fibers in mainstream fashion. Because all these students who are also consumers are experiencing a synthetic material or plastic fatigue. they were just not quite aware and did not know exactly where to begin. After attending mine and other professors' classes in our program of textile development and marketing, they're aware that they can use recycled petroleum polymers without burning a hole in their pockets or without causing more carbon footprints. So I encourage and lead my students to think critically about the choices they make as consumers and they will have to make as textiles professionals once they join the workforce. We even discussed that there may come a point where they have to maybe make a difficult choice between their values and their paycheck. I will not go into the details of that, but I feel very proud and satisfied to know that my colleagues and I are giving our students valuable knowledge and information and the ability to choose ethically as and when needed. Now, because our students are so aware about sustainability and microplastics that I was the advisor for the AATCC club, and as part of the club, which is a student-led club, we even did a protest in April of 2022 against synthetic petroleum-based fibers, and it was appreciated even by AATCC. So knowing that they support a lot of man-made polymers, they were still very open to the idea because it was a student-led peaceful protest. So I think so our students are, they understand, they realize, and I'm very proud of that fact.
Great. And thank you for all the work you're doing to keep them current and what's going on in the marketplace today, because for us in business, we will have those students one day working with us. And it's great when they come in with that knowledge base and certainly an appreciation for natural fibers and the changes that we're all trying to make in the industry as well. Looking at that. And it's interesting you brought up the protest. We, of course, saw that. We're aware of that in the cotton industry. We loved it without a doubt. So we can be added to that list with AATCC. But, but talking about this and protest and things, let's change up what we're talking about right now related to microplastic or microfiber pollution. And let's talk about how this issue is presented to the audiences we represent. So whether you're representing the students, Preeti, or we're looking at the industry or consumers, do each of you believe that there is misinformation or potentially a disconnect when reaching out to this audience? And it could be on social media or another tool. So Preeti, let's just start back with you.
Yes, thank you, Kim. I would say a major disconnect. It is because this is my observation. A lot of brands post misleading or incomplete information on their websites and through their advertisements to entice, to lure the young or the less informed consumers. Not everyone is as aware or well informed like you and me, probably. Consumers generally tend to believe whatever they see on websites and advertisements. They do not dig deeper than that, and it is very easy to mislead such group of people, mostly when they are very brand loyal to begin with. When I start teaching about petroleum-based fibers and their strengths and weaknesses, and start discussing how they shed while even putting a garment on or during laundry or drying, and how their polymer chains get broken down into smaller chains to macro and then microparticles, the students look shocked, sometimes hurt, because a lot of people, especially the younger generation, have an emotional connection with the brands and the style of clothes they shop for. When they come to learn about the gruesome reality of the clothes they are wearing or they shop for, they feel guilty that they have also contributed to the microplastic pollution. And I have to tell them, don't worry, that's why you and I are here. We'll continue to make things better and become more responsible consumers. Thanks, Kim, back to you.
Yeah, great. Well said. And just giving the tools and understanding, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And that's what's happening with this topic. Mary, do you have any input on this?
Thanks, Kim. For myself, the area that strikes me most is when companies are advertising, sustainable fibers or recyclable fibers, and that, are not natural-based fibers. And when we think about recycled, say, recycled polyester, we're not taking polyester from garments and recycling it back into garments. We're taking polyester from water bottles and recycling it back into garments. And and there's not a lot of information available to demonstrate that these second use materials are as robust as, say, their predecessors. So I feel like the consumer is being a bit misinformed in that area. And additionally, when we are talking about recycling man-made cellulosics, that, oftentimes we know that cotton can be recycled into man-made celluloses, but man-made cellulosics cannot be recycled into anything else. So we are providing half the story to the consumers, that they are feeling, made to feel good that they're maybe purchasing garments that are made from recycled materials, but they're not really given the story that this is the end of the line for those materials. And as compared to a cotton fiber, which is, much more robust, much more versatile, can be recycled back into a yarn, can be recycled back into, say, a nonwoven, can have a life as potentially another fiber. And so there is a much more robust circular story for the cotton fiber than for any other fiber that is used in textiles. And I do not believe that the industry is characterizing those other fibers quite as honestly as they could be.
Right, thank you. And you make a really good point that even if it is recycled, say a recycled polyester, it's still not going to break down once it gets to the landfill or the environment. We've seen research that shows that's concerning too. So we have to think about that full life of what that means. Thank you, Mary, for that. Marissa, have you got anything for us on this topic?
Sure. I echo absolutely what Preeti and Mary have said. I think when we look at the marketing, some of that marketing of recycled plastic bottles becoming your new pair of jeans, it's marketed in a very sexy way and a very cool way. And brands are using talent, celebrities, and influencers to do that talk. However, at the end of the day, there is an end of the life, but the consumer's they're not getting that piece of the story. So I think for us, specifically cotton and other natural fibers, while there might be a perception of your grandmother's fiber, we're here to say that cotton is a natural fiber. It can be so many gorgeous things beyond the basics, beyond denim, beyond khaki, beyond t-shirts. We were working with a partner a couple of years ago, and they had a $8,000 Oscar de la Renta cotton ball gown. So you can see cotton in so many surprising ways. And then at the end of the day, you're making an environmentally friendly choice when you purchase a cotton fiber or a natural fiber. So I think, to get back to the question specifically, there just is a disconnect. There's a lot of misinformation in the media, specifically in social media, and it's kind of hard to correct that. There's so much of it going on. So we really do our best, at least at Cotton Incorporated, to tell the story of cotton and all the many benefits of it.
Great, thank you. And I think I'll take this moment to let everyone know that as a commodity program, we are under the USDA. And with that, all of the research, all of the marketing, all of the messaging we do at Cotton Incorporated has to be verified scientifically, generally by third parties, and then is USDA reviewed before we put anything out. So you can rely on the information that you hear from us, from our scientists, from our marketers that are on the phone today. So it's not just what we think or a hunch that we have. This is scientifically proven. And I'll mention this at the end too, but we have a wonderful website, cottontoday.com, that you can go to get scientific information. And then we have some other recycling programs that I'll mention soon to you. But let's see, Stephen, I don't want to leave you out. Do you have anything to add?
Oh, yes, thanks. Well, you guys covered it well, but I do have some more disconnects. So I think something I didn't think of before, but the recycling concept, textile recycling, I think that in itself is a huge disconnect. There's a disconnect between, is it better for the environment? There's a lot of questions there. We're still trying to figure that out. And then at the end of the day, even if you have a recycled polyester shirt, so the plastic bottle issue aside, it's still plastic, which when you use the garment does produce plastic microfibers, also known as microplastics. So there's a disconnect there that, again, yes, recycling and recycled textiles is just the solution, but from a microplastic problem, that still is a problem. There's also another disconnect in the industry. So it appears in a lot of these conversations I have, I'm associated with a lot of different industry groups that are focused on solving a variety of sustainability problems, but the microfiber one in particular, the industry seems to be focused on shedding. So can we do something? Can we make this sweater differently? Can we construct the fabric in a way to limit shedding? Of course, this is cotton. So the fibers that shed off this garment are made of cellulose, which is a naturally occurring plant material. That's part of the natural ecosystem of Earth. We've had plants on the planet for billions of years. This is all part of the carbon cycle. So as plants, shed their leaves every year, that's also cellulosic. It's just cycling through the system. So these cotton microfibers have been shown to biodegrade in all media. We've tested this with researchers from North Carolina State and Cornell, looking at wastewater treatment, looking at lake water, seawater, even soil. So these microfibers for cotton garments, they biodegrade. Now, of course, that's a different story for synthetic garments. So they still emit microfibers, of course, that are plastic, and those don't degrade at all in those same media that we've seen. So I think, again, it's pretty obvious to see the problem is really the source of the fiber. If it's a plastic source, petroleum-based product like synthetic materials, then this is not part of a natural cycle on Earth, and those don't decompose, they stay around. So in reality, this problem is pretty simple. Use more cotton. I guess I'll end it with that.
We could end the whole presentation now with that, Stephen. Absolutely. Yeah. Use more cotton. And also, when you're done with those garments, recycle them. And there are different ways that can be done, but one is through a Blue Jeans Go Green recycling program we have. You can go to the website, bluejeansgogreen.org, and get more information on that, but it's easy. And we've worked with more than 500 brands and retailers and partners over the 16 years this program has been in existence. And when you take your item into a retailer or brand that we're partnering with, you get a discount on your next cotton content item. So it's a great program. Hope you'll take a look at it. Let's go back to some consumer data and what we know from the Lifestyle Monitor again. And we've got not just its data in the US, but we've got it globally if anyone's ever interested. We know that 2/3 of shoppers who are aware of microfiber pollution say it will affect their future apparel purchases. Now, let's be honest, there's a theory called say do, and what people sometimes say and what they do can be different. For example, we're going into the holiday season. A lot of us will say after December that we're going to hit the gym in January, but that may not be what we do, but we have the best intentions. It's the same with sustainability, but we need to help consumers do a better job with that. We also know, though, that attitudinal change leads to behavioral change. And in the past 5 years, we've seen awareness of microplastics go from 17% up to 38% among Americans. That's a significant change. they're getting it. They've heard it. They're hearing it all the way through different industries, not just the textile industry, consumer packaged goods and others as well are talking about it. So Marissa, now that you know this and you're aware of it, does this impact how you communicate microplastics and the awareness among consumers to brands and retailers? Or I guess, do you think it would impact how they produce their clothing or even how they communicate with their consumer, and especially maybe the fashion forward ones?
Sure. So sustainability, of course, and microfiber pollution is certainly a large topic in the industry, and brands are really doing the diligence now to see what their role can and should be in meeting the consumer where they are. Many, however, are really treading lightly to avoid greenwashing and other, media and PR sort of disasters. So many retailers are simply not there yet in terms of more sustainable production practices. But the good thing is most are certainly working towards short and long-term goals. So we are hearing that in the industry. But certainly they don't want to be canceled. And if they want to remain relevant, they'll have to be mindful on when and how they're talking to their audience about sustainability. They'll have to be able to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So when we go to market to work with our partners, they love what we have to say because you don't have to sacrifice one benefit for another when considering cotton fabrication specifically, and that does go a long way. So this is what the consumer wants. They want to ensure they're getting stylish, well-fitting, comfortable clothing, but that it's also a better choice for the environment. So that's how we approach our partners, and they really do that. That really does resonate, and they do latch onto that notion.
Great. Thanks, Marissa. Preeti, does this match up with what you're doing or what you're hearing with your students?
Absolutely. I'm actually thrilled to be listening to everybody's comments and suggestions and discussion. This is great information, let me tell you. So yes, this does match up. Our students, when they are informed, educated, that changes their perception towards textiles, towards brand loyalty, towards their buying and spending habits, towards sustainability. And the best part is when the students come back to us or to me and they'll tell you, hey, professor, I have stopped buying virgin polyester or nylon clothing. I'm thrifting these days, or I am exchanging, or I have just bought this expensive wool item or cotton jacket or linen. And I have stopped buying, I'm looking at labels more carefully, and I am looking for recycled polymers. That gives me such a huge sense of accomplishment. It's hard to describe in words. I generally end up giving them a hug. At FIT, we may celebrate Sustainability Awareness Week maybe twice a year, but we practice it and live it every day of our lives. This is a vision that I have, and most of us at FIT have gotten from our president, Dr. Brown, and I think so we all are continuing with it, and we are doing our best to bring it and to our classrooms and kind of install it in our syllabus, our teaching, and in our students, so that we are able to graduate more responsible and very aware students who will be joining the workforce, and they are ready to be part of the workforce anytime they join.
Great. I think I'd like to come take your course. So maybe I can sign up on the professional side. Stephen, I don't know. Do you have anything to add on this one?
Yeah, I love the fact that these students are engaged and really, fired up about this. That's awesome. So I think really, again, I just want to say we're fortunate working for cotton, and that's our fiber that we're promoting. We have Mother Nature on our side. So again, this is a fiber that's grown from the earth. It's a naturally occurring plant material. I mentioned cellulose. Again, it's the main building block of all plants, and then cotton happens to be about 95% cellulose. You don't have to do much with it besides get the seed out, and then you can pretty much spin it from there and you have a workable fiber. It's biodegradable. Again, we tested this in all different formats, and we've proven that even if you dye and finish it, forgot to mention this research before also with Cornell, but it also still degrades in with common dyes and finishes. So, again, the solution is fairly simple with just using more cotton. It's aligned with what we do here at Cotton Incorporated. So that's first, I got to start with that. Secondly, metrics. So we are working towards having this metric. You said you were surprised that there's no impact category that covers this. So were we, and we felt it was kind of a little unfair. So we're working with industry leaders to actually fill this gap. And a really awesome organization called Marilka, which stands for Marine Impacts in Life Cycle Assessment. We're funding some research with them and the Polytechnic Institute of Montreal to really go through the whole process and break it down in a systematic way on what would need to be there actually to fill this data gap. So the goal of that research and that effort is, again, to inform the LCA community and eventually have an impact category that incorporates microplastic emissions. So right now you have global warming potential. That's the one that captures greenhouse gas emissions and climate change impacts. So there's stuff like that in LCA where there's not one for microplastics. So we hope with this research that we will actually have that, and that's great. That's a solution, I think, because before you can measure it, you can't manage it. That's what I say.
You're absolutely right. We've got to be involved in those developments of standards and other things. And it's really interesting because what I heard you say, Stephen, is that when you look at cotton fabric, you can dye it, treat it, compost it, and it will all break down. It doesn't matter, any of those items. That's pretty amazing. And it is my understanding, and Mary, I'll throw this at you. It's my understanding that scientifically, cotton fibers break down in wastewater treatment plants and in compost facilities. Hopefully I've got that right. What other research are you aware of that's being done to help us with biodegradability of natural fibers compared specifically to synthetics? And are there any key takeaways for consumers?
Yes, Kim, you're absolutely right. And, Stephen mentioned a couple times that, we have, we've done research through North Carolina State University and through Cornell University that shows that cotton, whether it is dyed or finished with typical textile finishes, will break down in wastewater, freshwater, seawater, compost. And most recently, we're completing a project looking at a simulated landfill environment, and cotton is also breaking down under those conditions as well. And just to elaborate a little bit, cotton is breaking down in these environments, and polyester is not. And polyester, of course, is not water soluble. But polyester is also not recognized as a food source. So one of the reasons why cotton breaks down, as Stephen mentioned, cotton is the most prolific natural polymer on Earth, and it is composed of glucose. So glucose makes up cellulose. Glucose is sugar. So when cotton ends up in the environment, it is seen as a tasty snack for bacteria, microbes, fungi, in all of these different environments. And we have research to show that, these microbes, no matter where in the environment we look, just absolutely do not see polyester as a food source. And so, polyester may, disintegrate under UV sources or through the weather, but it won't biodegrade like cotton will biodegrade. And so that is just one of the, it is the key attribute to cotton, its naturalness. And people may think, well, if you put a dye on it, if you put a finish on it, you're keeping those microbes from getting to the garment. But we've also shown through our research that, I think that the dyes and the finishes never completely encapsulate the fiber. They never keep the entire organism from being able to access that cotton fiber. There is always some chink in the armor there that will enable microbes to get to the cotton. And then once that happens, it's like a chain reaction. So, so we are very fortunate that, you know, as Stephen said, you know, cellulose has been around since the beginning of time. And, you know, we've even compared the cotton decomposition to an oak leaf. And we can see that cotton fibers degrade more quickly than an oak leaf. And so, you know, we think about that, you know, over time when the leaves fall from the trees and they break down in the environment, you know, just as another natural material, cotton also breaks down.
Great, thank you. You know, we're talking a lot about sustainability right now, but it's important that we all step back and we think about what does this really mean when consumers at point of purchase. Preeti talked about a lot of her students, they don't really realize what's going on or what matters to them. And we know that at least for cotton, about 85% of the fiber goes into apparel or home textiles. And when consumers are buying apparel or even home textiles, to some extent, the apparel, what matters to them the most is fit, quality, looking at durability, longevity, and then without a doubt, price comes into play. And even more so right now when you have spiraling or increasing interest rates, inflation, and then you have potential of a recessionary period is going to become more important. So we have to find a way of how we connect the real drivers for apparel purchases to sustainability. So for example, maybe some of the messaging and things that we say are that an item is fashionable and sustainable, that it is good for the environment and it will last a long time as well. Or maybe it does no harm to your budget and no harm to the environment. But you start to see how we try to put things together and how it will matter more to consumers. Marissa, can you give us any examples or share how you have these types of conversations with brands and retailers to help move into this world of sustainability?
Sure. So, you know, brands and retailers are aware, of course, that shoppers are looking to be more sustainable, and they also know that these shoppers are looking to them, their favorite brands and retailers, to help them with their journey. So industry data shows us that 88% of consumers want brands to help them to be more concerned with environmental matters. And we're seeing that retailers are looking into sustainability in a broad sense, and they're looking towards their assortment, whether they manufacture private labels or how they're purchasing their lines, but they look for them to be possibly purposely made. Are they using natural fibers? What is the use of recycled materials? Is it low impact? What about upcycling, responsible manufacturing? There's so many things. But at the end of the day, retailers can really be successful with messaging when they're being, number one, transparent, when they're making the messaging simple and digestible. And most importantly, they have to be focused in their messaging. They can't be all over the place. They can't have all these different ideas. It won't come across genuine, and they probably aren't being genuine if that's the case. But something Stephen mentioned, that one thing about cotton specifically is that we have Mother Nature on our side. And so when we go to market, I think that that's just such a simple yet impactful way of talking to our brands and retailers, that use cotton. Cotton's a natural resource and it's recyclable and renewable. So when we go to market, we use the simplicity of the fabric of our lives.
Yep. Wonderful. And also, I think it would be interesting for people to know that you have developed a sustainability guide that you provide to brands and retailers when you talk with them to make this science digestible, because it's technical, right? We've already heard some things. I think Mary said to us that it's that cotton is the most prolific natural polymer on earth. Right? Wonderful things like that. But we found a way to do that. So if anyone listening or viewing this would like that information, they could probably reach out to you and get that.
Absolutely.
Great. I was once told by a scientist here at Cotton Incorporated that for every problem that there is a solution in nature. And if that's true, then we have to protect our environment. we have to look at the things that we're doing today. Stephen, I'm wondering what promising signs you're seeing in this area of different types of research that's occurring, and that you can tell me that science is going to help us solve this larger issue. And right now we're talking primarily about microplastics. What do you have to say on that? Maybe any industry changes or practices that we could put in place to help us all do a better job?
Yeah, I think it's super important. And I think first and foremost, one thing that makes me hopeful, you said earlier, is from our consumer insight survey that consumers are catching on to this and they are aware of the microplastic pollution problem. And they're saying it's going to impact their purchase decisions. So I feel like that kind of is putting pressure on brands, and they're feeling the heat. So they're trying to figure out different ways to address this problem. And like I said earlier, there is a disconnect between the approach. I do think that's shifting, to make a fabric that's constructed in a better way, I think obviously is a good thing. But at the end of the day, I think just using more cotton and natural fibers in general is going to be the key to the solution. I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking here. And from a research perspective, we kind of know the problem. There's 14 million tons of plastic that end up in the ocean every year. And this is a significant problem. I said earlier, 35% of the microplastics found in the ocean are attributed to synthetic garments. So we have this huge body of research and data out there that's pretty obvious on what the problem is. And we have a simple solution that can be implemented now, which is use more cotton. So I think really we just need to do this. And again, actually another thing is figure this tool situation out to get the metrics that are more illustrative of what's actually occurring. So have an impact category that shows microplastics, the true impact of those. But I don't think we need to wait for that to occur. I mean, we have all the data that shows the problem. We have a pretty obvious solution. So we just need to align as an industry and head down that path.
Yep, absolutely. And building on that, Marissa, I'm going to jump back to you for just a minute. Do you have any other final comments on the longer term perspective or future for retailers and brands and what they're looking at on this issue?
Sure. So definitely we're seeing brands and retailers are being smarter, a little more strategic on the topic than they were, let's say, even 3 to 4 years ago. All over the industry, as we mentioned, we're seeing claims of greenwashing. There was little transparency, and the consumer was able to see right through the misleading marketing. So now what we're seeing is that the retailers are taking things a bit slower. Not all of them, but some of them that we're hearing are taking things a bit slower. They're being much more mindful in their marketing efforts, and they're doing what they can to take part in the movement in a more authentic way. And that's what's true to their brand ethos. So some brands are incorporating more natural fibers in their lines, or participating in programs such as Cotton's Blue Jeans Go Green Denim Recycling Program. Madewell has a whole Do Well platform. Zappos has their Zappos for Good initiative, and others like Revolve have curated sustainable shops within their e-commerce site to help guide shoppers to make purchases of items that are produced more sustainably. Something actually recently we did was partner with Revolve, and we talked to cotton water conservation and the microplastics issue during New York Fashion Week. So at Revolve Gallery, we used, which is essentially a total fashion platform, but we use that platform to also educate that consumer about cotton sustainability.
Yeah, great. And just so many wonderful things the industry can do. And it is about making it easy and convenient for the consumer, because it's not top of mind. That's not what drives them to buy apparel. You want to look good, right, on what you're buying. So that all these messaging techniques and things we're giving are so important. And there are other things we can do too to help close that say-do gap that I talked about earlier, such as we've talked about it already today. Check the label, look for cotton, buy natural fibers. Also, you want to look at things such as wash clothing only when it's dirty. Don't wash it every time you wear it. That's not necessary. Wash in cold water. That's one that's been around for some time. And preferably, we prefer that people air dry clothing. That helps the environment as well. But if you use the dryer, don't overpack it. You know, try not to do that because that will minimize friction. So there are tips like this that we can share and we can take out to the industry, whomever that is, students, consumers, so they can do their part as well. And as we mentioned earlier, the recycling programs, and we just created one in the UK called Cotton Lives On. So now we're going to wrap up. My last question for the panelists today is that we're talking about tips for consumers and different things, but what about tips for any Preeti's FIT students? Do any of you have any comments or messagings about how the students can choose a career where they can do good and they can help a company be profitable? Would anyone like to take that?
I'd like to start. I have some insights here. I would like the students to know that, you know, sustainability in the fashion world, you know, you definitely just can't leave that up to the consumer to make the right choice with how they, you know, dispose of their garments. Sustainability starts all the way back in manufacturing. And, you know, when you go to, you know, begin your career, that, you know, it would be wonderful, you know, to try to help influence, you know, sustainability throughout your supply chain, and to, you know, to discuss and think about, you know, all the way back to what fibers you're choosing, B, what dyes you're choosing, you know, and try to get information about, you know, you may spend a little bit more on the dye, but typically the dyes that cost more, you need to use less of. And so you think about the finishes that you're putting on the fabrics and how is that going to impact, you know, the environment. And then you may think about, well, do I create a blend? Do I create, you know, a single fiber fabric? So there's going to be things that you are going to learn throughout your career, you know, your time at FIT, that, you know, you're going to be able to carry with you into your employment. And it's going to be, you know, perhaps you're going to be the, you know, the harbinger of change, that and bringing this new information to your employer, and you know, sort of, you know, providing them with the insights and providing them with the information that they need to say, you know, possibly moving away from, you know, just creating, you know, we've got to have like, you know, 5 new styles out this week, that from a fabric that may end up only lasting 2 or 3 launderings before it starts to fall apart, to, you know, let's maybe reduce the amount we're putting out, but put those resources into some garments that will last longer and be more sustainable, and, you know, will live beyond, you know, the first consumer's useful life, and then go on to, you know, a second life with another person or as another product. So you're going to need to, you know, be able to convey this information in a great way to your employers. And so I think having standards and having convictions and being able to relay those in a appropriate way to try to push for change in the fashion industry is going to be an opportunity for you in the future.
Great, thanks, Mary. Anyone else like to chime in?
Yes. So, Mary, your information was so good. Thank you so much. Very enriching. I would, however, add to it that it's not just the supply chain or the brand's responsibility to instill sustainability at every level, because the bigger umbrella is profit. If they are not making profit, they will run out of business eventually. So my approach is not that they should be very aware and should practice sustainability at every segment of their supply chain or production. I believe that the consumers should be aware and made aware and be held responsible as well, because we just cannot demand sustainability just from the brands, because they are there to make profit as well. So some onus should be on our shoulders. It should be our responsibility as well to be aware and also demand natural fibers or cotton. What I do is I model my clothes. So I have mostly decent pieces of garments which are made out of natural fibers. I wear them and I do kind like of a 10 seconds walk and I display it and I say, guess the fiber, and people guess it. It's a fun activity, icebreaker. And then when they know that, oh, this is cotton, I can't believe it. Well, that it doesn't look wrinkled. So I said, yes. So even if it is wrinkled, take pride in wearing it. If linen is wrinkled, if cotton is wrinkled, take pride in wearing those wrinkles. If cashmere shows up a hole, take pride in wearing those holes and say, hey, my garment is superior, my fiber content is superior, I'm cleaner and sustainable than what you're wearing. So if we have that attitude, if we take that responsibility, then the responsibility on the shoulders of the brand is kind of, the burden is kind of reduced. They don't feel so pressured because we need to take responsibility as well.
Great. I think that's wonderful advice for all of them. And again, thank you for all that you're doing on behalf. Marissa, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I would just say to FIT students and others out there that you just have to have passion. And from a marketing perspective, if you do go into the field, you have to believe in what you're marketing. There was a previous time in my career where I didn't feel as good about the product. I didn't truly believe in it. And that actually makes your job harder. So I would say find something that you're passionate about, something you feel good about, and then you can talk about it all day long and you can be a really successful marketer because you truly believe in the product that you're promoting.
Absolutely. I agree with everything you said. You've got to have that passion, and that passion will show through, no doubt, when you love what you do. Stephen, anything on this topic?
I would just say be confident in a career in sustainability, because there's a lot of momentum here, as we've talked about, and there's a lot of work to do. I pull up this all the time, but while we were sitting here before this call, I pulled up the Science-Based Targets Initiative, and I filtered it by the textile and apparel sector to see how many brands have signed on. So this is an organization that helps brands set their targets. So what is their piece of the pie for the overall emissions in helping the globe limit their emissions to 1.5 degrees C, which is kind of the target we're all headed towards. There's 256 companies in there. I think last time I checked, in the apparel space, that is, there's thousands of companies overall, but just in apparel, over 256, 96 of those have approved targets. So they're headed down this pathway and they need your help to help them solve these problems. It's really fun to be part of this and be working on the solution. So I'll say just be excited and empowered that you're kind of helping the world and humanity kind of solve this really difficult problem. So
yeah, well said. And it's new. It's a new frontier that you can be involved in as well. Well, we're wrapping up now. Professor Joy, is there anything else you would like to ask the panel, or do you have to say?
I have, yeah, so thank you. It was a very, very productive discussion, but I have two questions. One for Kim and Marissa. So in your lifestyle monitor survey, and I have the numbers here that Kim mentioned, so it went up to about 38% of the consumers now are aware of microplastics. So the question is, there's a huge gap. So we have 62% of consumers that are not aware of microplastics. So what is Cotton Incorporated doing to educate this whole segment, this whole demographic of consumers that are not even aware that we have a problem?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. We have a lot of different things going on, from digital campaigns that we run through our advertising group that talk about this issues. And I'm going to show you a video in just a minute that Marissa talked about as well, that we did at Revolve, that takes this issue. And she'll have to tell you, I can't remember the number of people that attended that event at Revolve. But so we have digital campaigns that are going on in our Blue Jeans Go Green program. When we recycle cotton, it goes into insulation. that insulation now goes into food packaging. So think of someone like a Freshly or someone like that when you order food and get sent to you. One of our partners is a seafood brand, and they send the seafood. So in there, we have messaging about the microplastics issue. So when we start to do these things, one of the things I tell everyone is it has to be relevant. It has to be at the time that consumers are making a decision and it matters to them. Otherwise, it's going to be awareness. Maybe it stays, but it may not stick. But if it's relevant, it will stick with them. So we look for all of those opportunities. And there's more than that. We're using influencers, and it was just World Cotton Day. We talked about microplastics. And the last one I'll end on, which is one of my favorites, is during Shark Week, which I think everybody likes to watch during the summer. We had social media campaign that went out that talked about much of the research and how it impacts Greenland sharks and others as well, and what that could mean to aquaculture. So Marissa, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add on your end.
I think you answered the question very well, but I do think we look for unique ways to talk to microplastics. Again, sustainability is such a broad, huge topic, and retailers are trying to find their way. But what we can do, because we have such a large voice in this issue, is we can find platforms where it's appropriate and where it's relevant to talk about it. So the video that you'll see at the end, we're working with Revolve, a huge platform. And because they happen to be at Fashion Week and did a really experiential activation that was open not only to the industry, but to the consumer at large, which is really unique. Normally, New York Fashion Week is closed to the public. You have to have an invite. It's very specific. But we thought this was such a great platform to talk to microplastics. So we did it in a very relevant, cool, and simple way to get our message across.
And I'll just add to this too, that it was a 3D projection system on 3 walls. And on the other wall, there were cotton apparel products that they had a QR code that they could purchase. So again, everything coming together to give that opportunity to be relevant. Next question.
And the next question is for Mary and Stephen. And it was mentioned that you should wash clothes less often. And I know you guys have done research, Mary has and Stephen has, on how washing and how the end of care of garments affects microplastics. So would you just, for our consumers, for anyone listening, can you provide some insight during washing? What is the difference and what type of washing should be done? Meaning front loading versus top loading, the water temperature, the types of detergents that one might use to reduce friction. Mary, Stephen, both of you.
So there has been research that shows that the front-loading washers can be more gentle to the garments than the top-loading washers with the agitator. So now there are a variety of different washing machines there. One of the best recommendations, and I think Kim may have mentioned it earlier, is you don't want to overload your washing machine. You don't want to overload your dryer, because as you go wash your garments, you get fabric to fabric friction, abrasion, and fabric to the I guess metal, the drum of your dryer or washer, abrasion. So so that is one recommendation, is to not overload your washing machines, your dryers. Another is I believe that there has been some research out there that show that potentially the use of, say, a fabric softener can protect your fabrics a little bit better and allow them to pass by each other and not reduce the abrasion on the garments. If we are seeing abrasion in the washing machine and the dryers, so an idea would be to maybe wash your garments but then hang them up to dry and sort of skip that tumble drying abrasion that you would get to help reduce some shedding. And we are seeing research that shows that microfiber shedding does decrease over time. And I believe this is going to be garment specific, but that just sort of gives credence to the fact that, you know, purchase garments for the long term, you know, instead of purchasing garments with the idea that you're gonna, you know, wash and wear them a few times and then throw them away, that, you know, you're going to purchase garments and you're going to hang on to them for a long time. So by, you know, and that's really the definition of sustainability. So you want to, and you can think that, you know, as I'm my more, you know, these garments that are mainstays, that the, you know, that they would shed less the longer that I own them. You know, talking about the different, of course, when we talk about fabric water temperature, we really didn't see in our own research, we really didn't see a huge difference between water temperature as it relates to shedding. We did see that the use of detergent did increase the level of microfibers that were released in the wash, but you know, that's just how it's going to go, because you need to use detergent in the washing machine. We're not going to advocate not using detergent. So so there are lots of factors that do influence microfiber development, but you know, if you're careful in your choice of materials, if you're careful how you wash them, maybe skip the tumble dryer, you know, you can reduce some of this microfiber shedding.
And Stephen, I know you're an advocate of using washing and drying in LCAs, and can you shed more light on that?
Yeah, so I think, you know, Mary covered it pretty well on the different approaches you can take to cut shedding down. Something I said a handful of times is, you know, the fiber choice matters, and then the end of life. So whatever happens to those fibers after washing and drying, we already talked about, you know, the biodegradability of the cotton fibers and the lack thereof of the polyester ones. So, you know, back to that fundamentally, I think, just to point that out. But yes, from the life cycle assessment perspective, the consumer use phase is massively important. So, and that involves washing and drying, of course. So it's about, I think, anywhere from 40 to 50% of the impacts are due from seed to bale, so like growing the cotton all the way to end of life. So that's significant. Kim said this earlier, if you can just wash and dry your clothes less, so, you know, wear an undershirt, you know, if the clothing isn't soiled, you don't really need to wash it every time. So, you know, we've also shown, we have research on this, Kim's group's done, that shows that cotton garments actually have less odor of an odor profile in the long term. So actually they are a fabric that needs to be washed less. So this is interesting. Another thing is, you know, we talked about fabric construction, or Mary did. So that's another way you can kind of limit this. But I think really the last thing I want to say is, you know, cotton is an innovative fiber. Sometimes it's not thought of that, but in the US, our growers are doing amazing things. We have sustainability goals. So we're really trying to push the needle on, you know, just all the way across the supply chain from growing the cotton. So optimizing this process and limit our impacts as much as possible. And really pushing the research envelope on the whole suite of solutions that you can have, all the way from microfiber emissions, you know, back to growing the cotton. So I think it's really important to remember that.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, and to all of our panelists. Thank you for unpacking this complex issue of microplastics and microfibers. And there's no doubt that everyone should have learned something today that listens to this. Improvements in sustainability, without a doubt, it's a journey. And it takes all of us to get there. And we want you to know that at Cotton Incorporated, we are committed to the science, the research, and the promotion of cotton sustainability, not just today, but for future generations. And we're hoping that you too will make this commitment to help our planet and Earth become a better place. To get us inspired and to learn a little bit more about microplastics and the research, we have a video that we've talked about that we're going to show you now. Thank you for taking your time today to listen to us.